A brand new $45,000 SUV can roll off a dealer lot with the store clearing about $200 on the vehicle itself, sometimes less than that. Sometimes the store deliberately loses money on it. And then you walk about 40 feet down a hallway into a smaller office with a different person and a thicker stack of paperwork. And that room, in roughly 20 minutes, with no test drive and no arguing about trim levels, can produce $2,500 in gross profit. Same customer, same transaction, 10 times the money. That gap is the entire business. The car is not the product a dealership sells. The car is the reason you're physically inside a building where 4 completely separate businesses are quietly running at once, and only one of them has anything to do with horsepower. Let me take the whole thing apart, starting with what it costs to even open the doors, because the sticker price of running a dealership is genuinely strange. First thing most people get wrong, the dealership usually doesn't own the cars sitting on its lot. Not really. Those vehicles are financed through something called floor plan financing, a revolving credit line, often from the manufacturer's own lending arm or a commercial bank, where the store borrows the wholesale cost of every unit and pays interest on it daily until it sells. Put a number on that. Take a $40,000 vehicle at, say, 7.5% annual interest. That's roughly $8.20 a day, every day, just for the privilege of letting that car sit in the sun. $246 a month. And remember what I said the front-end gross on a new car often is. If that vehicle sits 90 days, the interest has swallowed the entire profit before anyone even walks in. Sit longer, and the lender starts demanding curtailment payments. You pay down a slice of the principal in cash on an unsold car, out of pocket, as a penalty for aging. So a dealership isn't a store with an inventory. It's a leveraged position on a depreciating asset with a ticking clock attached to every single unit. That's why the salesperson is so aggressive about the car that's been on the lot 91 days and weirdly relaxed about the one that arrived Tuesday. Now add the fixed costs. A modern franchise dealership sits on somewhere between 3 and 10 acres of commercial land, usually on a high-traffic corridor, which is some of the most expensive dirt in any suburb. The building has a service department with a dozen or more lifts, a parts warehouse, a body shop sometimes, and a showroom the manufacturer designed for you. That last part matters more than people realize. Manufacturers run what are called facility image programs. Every several years, the brand decides the showroom needs a new look, new tile, new signage, a specific brand of coffee machine, a certain color of wall panel, and if you want to keep your allocation of the vehicles that actually sell, you comply. These remodels routinely run $1 to $5 million. The dealer pays, the factory approves the contractor list. Which raises an obvious question. If margins on the actual product are razor thin, and the overhead is this brutal, why are dealerships some of the most valuable small businesses in America routinely selling for multiples that make restaurant owners weep? Because of the 4 other businesses in the building. Business number 1 lives in that small office down the hall. In the industry, it's called F&I, finance and insurance. This is the single most profitable square footage in the entire operation, measured per hour of labor. Here's the mechanic almost no buyer understands. When the dealership submits your credit application, lenders come back with what's called a buy rate. Say the bank will fund your loan at 6.5%. The dealership is permitted, within limits set by that lender, to present you a higher rate, say 8.25%, and the difference in interest over the life of the loan gets split, with a chunk paid to the dealership. That's dealer reserve or dealer participation. Most lenders cap the markup at 1 to 2.5 percentage points, and often cap the dollar figure too, and disclosure rules have tightened considerably over the last decade after regulators took a hard look at the practice. But on a $60,000 loan stretched over 72 months, even a capped markup can be worth $1,000 or more to the store for arranging a loan that a computer approved in 90 seconds. And that's before the products. The vehicle service contract, what most people call an extended warranty, might cost the dealership somewhere between $800 and $1,200 from the administrator. It's frequently presented to you at $2,500 to $3,500. Gap coverage, which pays the difference if the car is totaled while you owe more than it's worth, might cost the store somewhere between $50 and $250. It's commonly sold in the $800 to $1,000 range. Then there's tire and wheel protection, key replacement, paint and fabric sealant, dent protection, prepaid maintenance. Each one is a separately priced line. Each one carries a markup that would embarrass a jewelry store. And here's the part that makes the whole model work. Every single one of them can be rolled into the loan, so it never feels like spending money. It feels like $11 more a month. Industry-wide, average finance and insurance gross per vehicle at franchise dealerships has run somewhere in the range of $1,500 to well over $2,000. High-performing stores push past $2,500. Multiply that by 200 cars a month, and you're looking at $500,000 in monthly gross from a department that has no inventory, no floor plan interest, and about 3 employees. Now, there's a layer beneath even that one, and it's the part almost nobody outside the industry has heard of. Many dealer principals own a reinsurance company. Not metaphorically, an actual small insurance entity, often domiciled offshore, that reinsures the service contracts and coverage products their own store sells. So when you buy that vehicle service contract, a portion of the premium flows into a reserve pool controlled by the dealer's own captive company. If the claims never come, if your transmission behaves, that unearned premium eventually becomes underwriting profit, plus whatever the reserves earned sitting in investments in the meantime. It's an entirely legal, extremely common structure. It also means the person selling you the warranty may be, several layers up, the person insuring it. That's not a scandal. It's just a piece of the machine nobody puts on a banner out front. Business number 2, the trade-in. When you drive your old car onto the lot, you tend to think of it as a discount. The dealership thinks of it as sourcing inventory below market. Your vehicle gets appraised against wholesale auction data, what that year, mileage, and condition is actually fetching between dealers that week. The number you're offered sits under that. Then the store spends maybe $800 to $1,500 reconditioning it and retails it for thousands more than they gave you. And used vehicles are where the real front-end money lives. Gross profit on a retailed used car commonly runs 2 to 3 times what a new car generates because there's no invoice for you to Google. Every used car is a snowflake. There's no reference price. That's why so many stores have quietly reoriented themselves around used inventory acquisition, buying cars off the street, off lease returns, out of service lanes, because a used car you sourced yourself is the highest margin unit in the building. Here's the piece that makes it even better for the store. The reconditioning work, it gets done in the dealership's own service department, which bills the used car department at an internal rate, so the money doesn't leave the company. It just moves from one pocket to another and shows up as revenue in a different department, which brings us neatly to the third business: fixed operations, service and parts, the part with the plastic chairs and the burnt coffee. Service departments charge labor rates that in many metro areas now sit between $180 and $275 an hour. The technician doing the work might earn $35 to $50 of that. Parts typically carry gross margins in the 40% range. Labor gross margins can run north of 70%. And unlike selling cars, this revenue doesn't care about interest rates, or whether the factory shipped enough units this quarter, or whether the economy feels wobbly. Brake pads wear out on schedule. There's a metric dealers obsess over called the absorption rate. It measures what percentage of the store's total fixed overhead, rent, utilities, salaries, insurance, the whole nut, is covered by the gross profit of service and parts alone. The goal is 100%. Because if service pays all the bills by itself, then every single dollar of profit from selling vehicles is pure upside. The store could theoretically sell 0 cars and still keep the lights on. Most franchise dealerships land somewhere between 60 and 90% absorption, and the very best ones clear 100. Think about what that means structurally. The showroom, the salespeople, the balloons, the entire theater of buying a car in a well-run store, that whole apparatus exists on top of a repair shop that was already profitable. The car sale is the customer acquisition event for the service department's next 10 years. And warranty work sweetens it further. When the manufacturer issues a recall, the factory pays the dealer to perform the repair, at a rate set by formula, generally a bit under retail, but with guaranteed volume and guaranteed payment. A big recall campaign is, from the service manager's chair, a quarter of pre-booked revenue. Business number 4 is the one you'll never see on any window sticker: money that comes directly from the manufacturer. Start with holdback. On most brands, roughly 2 to 3% of the vehicle's sticker price is paid back to the dealership after the car sells. On a $50,000 vehicle, that's $1,000 to $1,500 that shows up weeks later, invisible to the negotiation. Which is exactly why the old advice about getting the car at invoice was never the checkmate people thought it was. Invoice isn't the dealer's cost. It's a number on a piece of paper with a rebate hiding behind it. Then there are volume incentives. Internally, people call them stair-step programs. The factory says, sell 90 units this month and earn $300 per car. Sell 100 and earn $700 per car, paid retroactively on every unit. Run that math. At 99 cars, the store has $29,700 in bonus money. At 100 cars, it has $70,000. One additional sale is worth $40,000. That is the actual reason for every last weekend of the month sales event you've ever seen. On the 29th, a store sitting at 98 units will happily sell 2 cars at a $1,000 loss each, because losing $2,000 to capture $40,000 isn't a loss, it's arithmetic. The customer who wanders in that afternoon thinks they're a brilliant negotiator. They're a rounding error in someone else's bonus calculation, and both parties leave happy. And there's the doc fee, dealer documentation fee. In some states, it's capped by law at modest amounts, $55, $85, $100 and change. In states with no cap, it can run $600, $800, over $1,000 charged on every single deal. It covers real paperwork costs somewhat, but in a high-volume store, it's substantially margin. 300 deals a month at $700 is $210,000, and unlike everything else on the worksheet, it's usually non-negotiable by policy because the store can't legally discriminate on it between customers. Now stack all of that on top of a final layer that most people never think about: the real estate. In the vast majority of franchise stores, the dealer principal owns the land and building through a separate entity, and that entity charges the dealership rent. So the operating business can post a modest profit while the ownership group collects a substantial rent check from itself on appreciating commercial real estate at a major intersection. 2 businesses, 1 address. And when a dealership sells, the buyer pays for the tangible stuff, inventory, parts, equipment, plus something called blue sky. That's the value of the franchise right itself, quoted as a multiple of adjusted earnings. Depending on the brand and the market, blue sky multiples have ranged from around 3 times earnings for a struggling nameplate up to 7, 8, sometimes more for a dominant luxury or high-demand brand. On a store earning $4 million a year, that's a franchise right worth $20 to $30 million before you count the dirt underneath it, which is why the large public consolidators keep buying them. Now the fair caveat, because none of this describes every place with cars parked out front. A small, independent used lot, 15 vehicles, 1 guy, a gravel lot, is running a fundamentally different business with no factory money, no holdback, no warranty reimbursement, no allocation, and often no service department at all. Their margin is purely their eye for what a car is worth at auction versus what someone will pay for it. Rural single-point franchise stores selling 40 cars a month often can't reach volume bonus tiers at all, and genuinely live off the service drive. And the newest wrinkle, several manufacturers, particularly on the electric side, sell directly to customers with no franchise dealer in the middle, which strips out this entire structure and replaces it with a website and a delivery center. The risks in the traditional model are real too. Floor plan interest is brutally sensitive to rate moves. The same inventory that cost a store $100,000 a year to carry can cost $300,000 after a rate cycle. Used vehicle values can fall off a cliff, as anyone holding inventory when the pandemic pricing bubble deflated learned in a very expensive hurry. The factory controls allocation, which means it controls whether you get the models people actually want. And regulators at both the federal and state level have been steadily tightening rules on how add-on products and fees get disclosed, which puts pressure on exactly the highest margin room in the building. None of this is advice on how to buy a vehicle. It's just the map of where the money physically sits. So go back to that showroom desk. You're across from someone sliding a worksheet toward you, and you're fighting hard over $400 on the price of the vehicle. Win that fight. Genuinely win it, because the price of the car was never where this store planned to make its year. It was the admission ticket to a finance office, a service department, a trade-in appraisal, a factory bonus tier, and a rent check written to the owner's other company. If this changed what you think is actually happening the next time someone says, "Let me go talk to my manager," hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it genuinely pushes this to more people. And subscribe, because I'm working through a whole list of ordinary places running math this backwards, and the next one probably sold you something this week.